During the final years of the Second Sino-Japanese War, death became routine across occupied China. Villages vanished overnight, roads filled with refugees, and fear settled permanently into the soil. The Imperial Japanese Army advanced with overwhelming force, but behind the front lines, another kind of war was being fought, a war of terror, discipline, and public execution. Among the soldiers operating in these occupied territories was a man whose actions would later stand out even within an army already infamous for brutality. He was not a general, nor a celebrated officer. He was an ordinary infantry soldier entrusted with a sword and shaped by an ideology that stripped the enemy of humanity. Over the course of the war, he personally beheaded more than 300 people. The Japanese military of that era was driven by extreme militarism and unconditional loyalty to the emperor, who was believed to be divine. Soldiers were taught that surrender was the ultimate shame and that enemies, particularly Chinese civilians and prisoners, existed outside moral consideration. Violence was not only permitted, it was normalized, ritualized, and encouraged. Beheading executions became a common method of control. Prisoners of war, suspected resistance fighters, and civilians accused without evidence were gathered publicly. They were forced to kneel, sometimes after being beaten or interrogated. The executions were carried out with swords, often in front of other villagers, as a warning. The soldier at the center of the story took part in these executions repeatedly. Witnesses later testified that he showed no hesitation and no visible emotion. The killings were not chaotic acts of rage. They were systematic. The blade was sharpened carefully. Each execution followed the same pattern. Over time, the soldier began keeping count. As the number grew, his reputation spread quietly within his unit. Officers knew, fellow soldiers knew, no one intervened. In a system where brutality was mistaken for loyalty, his actions were tolerated and at times silently rewarded. Many of the victims were civilians, farmers, laborers, and young men accused of collaboration or resistance without proof. Some did not understand why they had been selected. Others were taken at random to meet execution quotas after guerrilla attacks nearby. Entire communities were forced to watch, powerless. As Japan's position in the war deteriorated, discipline within the army eroded further. Retreating units left behind burned villages, mass graves, and trails of unburied bodies. Executions increased as fear, frustration, and desperation spread among the troops. The soldier continued his role, adding to the number that would later condemn him. When Japan surrendered in August 1945, the war ended abruptly, but its crimes did not disappear. Allied occupation forces and local authorities began investigating atrocities across Asia. Survivors came forward. Mass graves were uncovered. Testimonies were recorded in detail. The soldier was arrested and placed on trial before a military tribunal, likely under Chinese jurisdiction. Witnesses described public executions, kneeling victims, and a man who carried out beheadings repeatedly over months and years. Evidence showed that the killings were not isolated incidents, but part of a pattern of systematic violence. In court, the soldier did not deny what he had done. He claimed he was following orders. He stated that he acted as a soldier should, obeying commands and fulfilling his duty to the emperor. This defense was common among accused war criminals, but the tribunal rejected it. The judges ruled that obedience does not excuse mass murder, that participation in repeated executions, especially of civilians and prisoners, constituted crimes against humanity. The sentence was death. Unlike his victims, the soldier was not executed publicly. There was no spectacle, no ceremony, no crowd forced to watch. He was executed according to post-war legal procedures, bringing a quiet end to a life defined by violence. His execution did not restore what had been lost. Over 300 lives have been erased. Fathers, sons, brothers, and unnamed individuals whose stories ended on their knees. Numbers could never replace names, but history recorded them to ensure the truth could not be buried. Today, his case remains a reminder of how ordinary individuals can become instruments of mass killing when ideology replaces conscience. The sword, once a cultural symbol, became a tool of terror, and the silence that followed each execution remains one of the darkest echoes of the war. Because remembering these stories is not about revenge. It is about refusing to forget What happens when humanity is abandoned?